Hey everybody, Jonathan here coming to you from the Blue HQ Underwater Lab for another episode of SCUBA 101, the series where we talk about scuba related concepts. Yeah, that's what we do. So in any case, today I want to talk to you about a cave diving thing. It's the concept of the traverse. And I think the reason I decided to do this is because we have an episode, the Grand Traverse, which we did with Gus and Woody from Dive Talk. We went to Peacock Spring State Park and we did an epic traverse. There's a traverse there that's almost a mile of swimming underwater. And I thought, we've never talked about what exactly is a traverse, and more importantly, what are the rules of a traverse? So, first of all, what is a traverse? A traverse is a cave diving term that refers to a dive where you go into one entrance to the cave and then you come out a different one, okay? So, most of the time when you're cave diving, I'd say 99% of the time, you go into one cave entrance and you swim around in the cave and then you come out the same entrance. And that's a normal cave dive. But if you're in a cave system that has multiple exits, you may think it would be fun to do a long dive where you plan to come out another exit. And that is very, very easy when everything goes according to plan and the other exit is not very far. But what happens when that exit is kind of far, and how do you plan gas management to make sure that you have enough gas to actually make it? Because the real question is, well, what happens if you get in really far and you don't have enough gas to make it to the other side, and you don't have enough gas to get back out? So that would be a major problem. So planning a traverse is all about gas management and learning some basic rules. So what I'd like to do is start by talking a little bit about the rule of thirds. And I just want to point out, I am not an instructor. And everything that I'm telling you here is mostly for entertainment purposes. This is not a class. I am not qualified to teach cave diving. I'm barely qualified to even do cave diving. So just putting that out there. So before we talk about a traverse, let's review a very important cave diving concept, and that is the rule of thirds. And what is the rule of thirds? Well, it basically states, and this is an unbreakable rule of cave diving, you cannot break this rule because it is one of the most important rules for safety. And that rule is that you can use 1/3 of your gas to go into the cave. Then you have the next third should get you out of the cave, because that's the same thing in reverse. And that leaves you with 1/3 for an emergency, sort of extra gas that maybe you need it because there was a delay, or maybe your buddy needs it because that your buddy had a problem with his tank or his regulator or whatever, okay? Extra. So visually, with a scuba tank, you say, okay, you start at 3,000 PSI and you go into the cave, and you can use 1/3 of your gas. And when you hit 2,000 PSI, now you've used 1/3. Now you're going to turn around and you're going to come out. And that means that when you get back to the entrance, you should be down to 1,000 PSI. You should not have less than that unless you had an emergency, in which case that's okay, because that's what it was for, okay? That's why you have that extra gas. So let's review how that rule of thirds looks in a cave dive. You're going to go in, you're going to go into the cave, you're watching the PSI on your tanks, and when you get to your what they call turn pressure, which in the case of my example here is 2,000 PSI in both of your tanks, when you get to your turn pressure, you're going to turn around and you're going to come back out. Now that is how a typical cave dive works. And I've put the line in red, okay? So the line in red is going to be critical in my next demonstration, which I now have to erase this beautiful artwork that I did and make a new piece of artwork. All right, now, how does the rule of thirds relate to a traverse? So here we have a traverse. We have a cave that has an entrance here and an entrance here. I know this artwork is amazing. Try to, not be too impressed by my incredible visual skills. And then we have a little red line that represents the line in the cave. Now, what is the proper protocol for doing a traverse? Now, we know that we have to come out at the end of the dive with a third of our gas remaining. At least that's the plan. You have to plan your dive that way. If something goes wrong and you use more of that gas, that's okay. But we plan our dive so that we use a third on the way in, a third on the way out, and we save a third for an emergency, which means that no matter where we come out, we got to come out with a third of our air. We had a plan to come out with a third of our air. So what does that mean? Well, that means in a traverse, you can use some logic here. If you go in, but you're not going to come out this way, but you're going to come out this way, you can go in, you can use a third of your gas, and then at some point, you're going out the other side and you're using the other third. So how do you know if you have enough gas to do the whole traverse with 2/3 of your gas? How do you know? And the proper way you do it is with more than one dive, because we have to do what we call proving the traverse. We have to prove the traverse. And that means prove that we can do it. Where was I? In any case, we're going to prove the traverse. And that means prove that we can make it. And the way you do this is with a couple of dives. So dive number 1, you go in from entrance number 1, and you go in, and you go in, and you go in, and you go in, and when you reach your first third where you have to turn, you get to your turn pressure, you take out a cookie and you put a cookie on the line. And unfortunately, I didn't bring a cookie. That's a cookie. Okay, it's just a little round marker, plastic marker that you carry on your, a clip on you, and you have a few, and you put the cookie on the line. It's got your name on it. It just lets you mark the line with your name. It's used for a bunch of different things. In this particular case, we're using it to mark how far we got into the cave from this side. Then we go out the normal way we just came in, just like this was a normal dive. Pretend this doesn't exist, okay? Now we go and we get the new tanks and we fill them up again and we start all over and we do a second dive and we go in from the other entrance and we go in and we go in and we go in. If we can get to the cookie before or at our turn pressure, then we know it takes a third of our gas to get to the cookie from this side, and it takes no more than a third of our gas to get to it from this side. And so now we know we can do this with 2/3 of our gas. And that means we have proven the traverse. This is a proven traverse. Everybody has to prove their own traverse. Now, what happens if my buddy says, you can totally make it? That's not proving the traverse. That's what we call in the business a trust me dive. You're trusting someone that you can make the traverse. Most of the time, you don't want to trust somebody else. You want to test it yourself. You want to prove that traverse, okay? So now once you've done the 2 dives, what you would generally do is on the second dive, you go in and you're like, oh, okay, so I know that I can make it, and you would take your cookie and you would go back out. The other option is you can now finish the traverse. So if you do it on the second dive, you go in, you reach the cookie, you're like, aha, I can reach the cookie, so I'm good. And then you keep going and you do the traverse. So the other option is you go in on the second dive, you decide that you can reach the cookie, you're good, you take your cookie back because you don't want to leave your cookie on the line because other people will be like, why is there a random cookie here? That's weird. So you take your cookie and then you go back out, and then maybe on a different day, you do the whole traverse. And that's how you would prove a traverse. Now, what happens if you can't reach your cookie? So let's say you go in on the first dive, you go in from this side, you get to here, you leave your cookie, and then you go out, the next day you go in from this side and you get to like here, you don't get to your cookie, and you reach your turn pressure, you're like, uh-oh, got to turn, and then you go back out. Now we have disproven this traverse. You actually cannot do this traverse on the gas supply that you have. And it's good to know that, because if you tried, you might not make it. So that's the basics of doing a traverse. There are ways in which this can be complicated. Because if there's a very strong flow in this cave, let's say that the cave continues to go in this direction, and it continues to go in this direction, and there's a very strong flow through this cave, you may find out that, well, there's rules that are different in that situation that are beyond the scope of this video. So in any case, with a very basic traverse, that's how the rules of a traverse work. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them to the best of my abilities. And if I can't answer them, I'll ask someone who knows more about cave diving than me. So there you go. Until the next time, thanks for watching Scuba 101. And don't forget to hit subscribe, and talk to you later.
Hey everyone! Thanks for watching our latest episode all the way to the end. Hit that subscribe button now so you won't miss our next episode.